We are back with you again with another Johnnie Torch review. Today we're taking on Stargirl Season 1, the DC Universe / CW production of a Jeff Johns story. And this one really came out of nowhere for me. It came as a surprise. I was somewhat familiar with the character. I didn't know a whole lot about Stargirl previous to this show. And it's a good thing, I think, in a sense, because I didn't have any preconceived ideas. It's written by Jeff Johns, who created the character, so there is very little, dilution of, I guess, his concept, because he's literally himself bringing it to television. Again, this was a show that started on DC Universe. They ended up, I believe, a day later. I don't have DC Universe, so I've only watched it on the CW. I believe it starts on DC Universe streaming service. Then they would edit. I don't know how long the episodes were on DC Universe, but they would edit down a little bit to fit broadcast time. And they would show the replay the next day, the following day on the CW. To its credit, I don't think there was very much edited that ruined it. That was my concern. We'll get to that in a second. But this was a pretty good model for how to do this. And apparently next season, Stargirl is going to start on the CW, and they're going to forego the DC Universe preamble, which, again, I have my concerns with, and I verbalized them before about CW potentially ruining this franchise. So this will be a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the show and you want to binge it first, you can come back later and we'll hear the different points that I make. But to give it just a brief overview, I would say, like I said, I really went in it blind, had no expectations, and it really was probably one of the best beginning to ending superhero series I've seen in a while. That could be just first season luck, so to speak. Obviously, the first couple of seasons of Arrow and The Flash were also pretty exceptional. In this case, they didn't really have that CW framework to go by, where there had to be an angsty romance, there had to be the LGBTQ characters that would be tokenized. They really were just able to hit the ground running as a superhero TV show. One of the things that impressed me the most was the fact that they did prize the costumes and the supervillain aspect of the show over anything else. You still got the relationship dramas in certain ways, but you really focused on that this is a comic book. This is superhero stuff. That when we come to a comic book or a series based thereof, we come into it with certain expectations, and we want to have them met, such as the hero has to be in costume a certain amount of time. Not a problem here. The villains have to be in costume a certain amount of time. Again, it varies a little bit from episode to episode, but we pretty much still got some costumed villains. So again, before I get into spoilers, very positive review from me. If I was to put a number on it, I'd probably give it 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars out of 5 for this first season. And that would be a solid, I will say, A-, probably an A-. I mean, there was some room for growth, some room for improvement, but still, it was a pretty strong season. So starting off with, again, this is the spoiler portion, so you're warned, but starting off with Courtney, played by, let me see, I got the names here because I'm not very good with them. Brec Bassinger, who plays Courtney, aka Stargirl. She was great. I thought she was a fantastic choice for this character. She's adorable. She's like everybody's little sister. That's kind of what I think Jeff Johns was going for with the creation of this character. It was inspired by his sister, and I think that she captured that and embodied that well. Again, she's a very good actress. I thought she had some very good, she had good chops when it came to the emotional scenes, the emotional moments. To be honest, a lot of other actors that are put into these CW shows kind of have to get broken into the role, I feel. Not her. I thought she pretty much encompassed it from the beginning. And the acting that she had to do opposite the staff, which was basically, I compared it to the magic carpet from Aladdin, where it's like, it's an inanimate object, but then again, it has a personality. And she had to imbue that staff with that personality whenever it tugs her in a certain direction, or it's obviously supposedly communicating with her. She has to, manipulate that staff to make that body language look like it's something that she's interacting with normally. So again, she did a fantastic job with the role. And the emphasis with her relationship with her stepfather, I thought, was really good. That's Luke Wilson as Pat, aka Stripesy. Again, we really don't see, and that's something that I liked, that we really don't see a step-parent and step-child relationship done very well very often. And you get to see that relationship grow over time, over the course of this whole season. And like I said, it was done exceptionally well. I mean, there wasn't an abundance of angst. There wasn't, it was something that they grew towards naturally without being sappy and sentimental or, antagonistic and unreasonably harsh with one another. And somehow, they felt very natural in their progression as a step-parent, step-sibling relationship. And again, like I said, you don't see this too often with step-parents, step-children. I think we've seen a pretty good relationship between, say, Joe and Barry over in The Flash, but you really didn't get to see too much of that relationship when Barry was a child. It was basically the relationship with them as adults, and you can understand how that they had time to kind of bond, where in this show, it didn't seem labored. I like the character of Mike. I thought that was pretty cool, the way they eventually brought him into the fold, as it were. I can't find that actor's name here on this list. But he was a very good actor. And again, they didn't, they kind of leaned towards some of those things like for an episode, but that was what was good about it. They were not afraid to go there, but they didn't belabor the point. That's kind of the thing that serialized television tends to beat these certain issues into the ground. We got the feeling that Mike felt left out. He kind of resented Courtney getting more attention from his father, but it lasts like an episode and it kind of blows over before too long, and they don't sort of mind that angst for all it's worth, which was, again, something that I appreciated a lot. Amy Smart, of course, as Barbara. I thought she did a really good job. One of the things when I was talking about how it felt like some things were perhaps left in the cutting room after it moved from DC Universe to CW was her relationship with Icicle. Let me see if I can find that actor's name. Let's see. No, I don't have it here, I don't think. Oh, yeah, here it is. Neil Jackson as Jordan. You kind of get the feeling that he's taken an interest in her, but again, it's left kind of ambiguous for the most part, and then there are certain hints, like in the latter half of the season, where he's kind of betraying that he's more into her, and I'd be interested in knowing if that's exactly the plan, was to keep it low key, or if that was something that they cut out certain scenes that weren't important, where he really was sort of trying to win her over. Because he sort of takes her out on a business, trip, and then kind of, he introduces her to his parents, which was kind of an interesting thing for just a boss and employee relationship, and they kind of like subtly built on this without really throwing all their ducks in the pond or whatever. And it was a lot, again, a sort of a lot more organic way of bringing this about without kind of beating you over the head with it that he was just some kind of mustache twirling villain. His plan was kind of interesting. Ultimately, his plan was to sort of take the liberal agenda and force everyone through mind manipulation to accept and endorse those beliefs. Again, this is something that wasn't belabored. It was sort of an 11th hour revelation. But that, it's kind of, I didn't know if they were like serious about it or if this was sort of a commentary on how silly, if taken to that extreme, those kind of beliefs are. I don't know. I guess that's up to the viewer too, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. It's up to you to determine. Let's talk about the supporting cast a little bit. We have, let's see, Wildcat. Let me see. Yvette Monreal as Wildcat. I thought she was very good. Again, this was a character that kind of grew on me. It was more, it was sort of an evolution of her character as being from something of a hurt, jaded person to sort of coming into her own. I was really impressed with Our Man. Let's see. His name is Cameron Gelman. That was good. I really like the old JSA characters, and he was always a curiosity for me. I always liked this character, Our Man, where he basically has a hourglass on his chest, and when he turns it over, he basically has 1 hour a day to have superpowers. I'm surprised that this character isn't a bigger character, because that's a great concept. That's a fascinating concept. But I don't think much has been done with him in the main, for what I know. And of course, also we have, let's see, the new Dr. Midnight, Angelica Washington, which they kind of didn't do much with her. I think she's kind of the techie, she's the techie character among these whenever they need someone to, read off a computer and stuff. And that was basically her involvement, which was the glasses, the goggles, with the original Dr. Midnight's mental programming in there. So, they could have afforded to do something more with her. They didn't even really get her in costume too much compared to the other characters. So I kind of felt badly for her. Well, her costume really wasn't nothing to speak of. I mean, it's different when it's a grown man wearing it, but when it's a 15-year-old girl wearing it kind of looked kind of frumpy. So I can kind of see what they were doing by staying away from it. Interesting villains going up against the new JSA, Brainwave, which there seemed to be a lot of chiefs for this JSA. We had Brainwave. He seemed powerful enough to get this thing done on his own. There was Icicle. There was the Dragon King. Some interesting characters that I felt any one of them could have held their own as a main villain. I kind of almost felt bad that they seemed to throw all their eggs in one basket. We also had the Sportsmaster. As far as I know, the first time Sportsmaster was really utilized, I don't think he was ever utilized in live action, was he? I could be wrong. And Tigress, that was a pretty good, formidable pairing. Solomon Grundy makes a brief appearance in his sort of like mindless Hulk's form. The Gambler, who sort of just looks like Colonel Sanders. And I think they even had, although I can't find it on the cast list here, the Fiddler. And again, they used it as a replacement Fiddler. This was a woman, I believe is his wife, who took up the Fiddler persona. So that was a pretty interesting stable of villains, and unfortunately they seem to kill them all off. As I said, I liked Our Man and what they did with him. Apparently, looks like there's some kind of burgeoning romance between he and Wildcat. That's a possibility, I'm thinking, going into season 2. He's sort of the brooding loner, you know what I mean? You kind of like that they both have that same kind of personality, I think. The thing that struck me the most, that kind of struck me odd in the finale, was Wildcat kills Brainwave, but at the same time, Our Man, who was going to kill Solomon Grundy, couldn't bring himself to do it, while Wildcat supposedly has values and religion, and even confronts Our Man about killing, didn't seem to have the problem with killing Brainwave. That didn't seem like something that sat well with me, because they didn't really explore it. I mean, it's one thing to have a character kill, a good guy character killed, where they are supposedly having a code and so on and so forth, but to sort of treat that as, well, I did it and that's it. I mean, this kind of goes back to like Man of Steel with Superman killing Zod, and you kind of get that feeling where it's like this terrible thing, but then we never talk about it again, and we kind of just move on quickly after that. And I felt the same thing here. She kind of like has some kind of, she kind of seems emotional at the end of the episode, but where they're sitting at the stadium or whatever, and you can kind of tell that she doesn't seem to be that cheerful. But again, it doesn't really seem like there's any outward show that this was meaningful. You know what I mean? That this meant something, and that this rattled her beyond the superficial. So I kind of had a problem with that. But apart from that, like I said, every episode basically had a lot of action. They would make, I think with the exception of one episode, every episode had the character in costume and had a battle. And another interesting character, Cindy, she was Sheev, I think is how they pronounce it. And she looks like Shigo from those of you that remember Kim Possible. She's a very interesting character. And again, like I said, I think it was a waste that she killed Dragon King, even though I understand it, because they kind of built up her character as being something, truly sinister. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm going to be interested in seeing what she does going forward. They did leave some kind of hint on the next season where she had some kind of diamond or something, but I really don't know where that was going. Apparently, Shade, I believe, was hinted at for the next season as well. That's another Flash villain. Again, it would be interesting to see if they tie this in with the actual Flash TV show, and we could have John Wesley Shipp return as Jay Garrick, because we do have a Jay Garrick, of course, in the CW verse. So that would be interesting now that the show is going over to the CW. Could there be a crossover? That would be interesting. We could also, now that we're on the CW, cross over Stargirl with a lot of these other characters from the CW. Particularly Barry Allen's Flash would be good. I'm not sure. I think they've kind of put her on a different Earth, and so this is probably not going to be something that would happen too often, or too regularly. They might do it once a season or something. So yeah, I mean, story-wise, like I said, a pretty strong storyline this season. We saw Courtney come into her own. The mystery of Starman, again, they kind of hinted all along that Starman was her father. Come to find out he isn't. It seems I kept expecting a swerve, because halfway through the season, her supposedly actual father shows up, and he sort of gives her the Ben Vereen treatment. For those of you who cried along back in the 90s with Fresh Prince. But, it just seemed like just an incident that really had no bearing on... I mean, I was expecting him to be a villain or an imposter or something happened, but nothing really was made of it. And then at the end of the season, we see the original Starman is still alive. And he's coming back, I guess. I don't know exactly what that portends. Like I said, I don't have any idea in the comics. We also have the character of the janitor. Let me see. What was his name? Shining Knight. Kind of an interesting character. I appreciated that they didn't want to have all the heroes, all the JSA killed off. It was an interesting thing. It was an interesting idea. I knew he was going to be something from what they were doing with him, but I would like to see more of the original team, but apparently most of them are dead. And it was interesting seeing how Stargirl sort of divvied out the, the different costumes and the different accoutrements to the different prospective candidates, and how she came up with her own costume. Again, that's always a fun thing when you see the origin. It reminded me a lot of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man had to come up with his costume. He had to come up with the web shooters and things like that. It felt very much like an origin, which was also something, as a person who really likes origin stories, I appreciated that a lot. Let's see, is there anything else we can hit on here before the robot Stripe? That was pretty cool. I like the fact that the CGI seems like they threw enough money into it. You know what I mean? They didn't really skimp on the budget, as you see in most cases with the CW shows. They had the luxury here of being able to do some pretty good CGI work. Like I said, going forward, hopefully they will show us a little more of the JSA. Hopefully they'll flesh out some more of these villains. They'll, be able to build up to another exciting finale. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and like I said, it's old school. This is kind of what I wanted in superhero television, old school like this. They started off the season kind of rocky. They were doing the stuff with the teen angst, with Yolanda having her difficulties at school, and then we had Cindy being sort of the typical class, what. I kind of felt at the beginning, yeah, this is okay, but but they got beyond that pretty fast. And like I said, I think if they could focus on continuing on in that way, they really could do something pretty fun with this and just keep it as a lighthearted, family drama, I guess, but an action adventure drama, not just the sort of stodgy, CW drama that they've had for 20 years at this point. All right, so like I said, I'm going to give season 1 of Stargirl 4.5 stars out of 5. Great costumes, action. The drama was handled well. They didn't beat anybody over the head with anything. No political woke points by trying to shove agendas in and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. Basically, they just kept it to the point, and that's what we want in our entertainment, basically. So that would be an A-, 4.5 stars out of 5 for Stargirl. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What did you like about the season? What did you not like about the season? What are you hoping for next season? Do you have any characters that you would like to see appear next season from the Stargirl comic? Because I don't know much about the Stargirl comic. So that'll do it for another Johnnie Torch review. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments in the description below, and I will address them on a future live broadcast. And so, until next we meet, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.